people watching live. So I'm just going to give another focus people to get connected. So where are you watching from? All very informal. I'm going to try and get through a lot of things in 30 minutes. So it's pitched as sofa CPD, so feel free to sit on your sofa, have your camera off and just watch. Glass of wine or a cup of coffee, whatever it is. So where are you watching from? What's your kind of research interest? So maybe pose a research question in the chat box. All your comments come to me only. That's to reduce your cognitive load. So it's between me and you. So where are you watching from? What's your research interest? Maybe tell me if you're currently doing an MPQSL or an MA or a PhD even, and that will give me a bit of context. So just let me know. So I'm just going to come off the slides for a minute just so you can kind of see me. I've got my virtual background here. I'm going to ask, and it's taken me a while to practice, so what, now what? And that's what my academic supervisors ask me all the time whenever we talk about research. If I come with an interesting question or interesting thought, first thing they say is, well, so what? And now what does it tell me? So I'm going to come back to that several times. So I'm going to get started. We're 2 minutes in. In the chat box, tell me where you're watching from, what your research interest is, and kind of what you're currently doing. Are you the research lead in your school? Are you doing an MA, MPQSL, thinking about a PhD or a doctorate, that type of stuff. So while you send responses, let me have a quick look through. So hi, Dawn from Blackpool. I was a teenage lad from Blackpool many years ago. Bishop Stortford, Eliza, thank you. Leicester, thank you. Niall in Dublin. Thanks for research interest. Hi, Shafina. We'll have a chatting later. Thanks for joining me.
Hello, as always.
Right, so I'm going to get the slides up, everybody. Let's get through all the things that I've promised you. So this is what I'd like to do. Got kind of three things. I'm going to skip this summary here. Three things. Even if we read and reference academic research, even if it's from decades ago, I mean, I see people talking about lots of things, even myself, cognitive load theory, cognitive apprenticeship, that's been published 30, 40 years ago through no fault of their own. Teachers were busy people. There's a fear of being left behind, but, you know, much of this research, at least what I'm starting to discover, gets referenced and cited by kind of, you know, especially when you get into your specialist field or your interest, you start to see things, not saying bandwagon, but kind of get regurgitated. Some things evolve, some things are new, etc. And we know at PhD and doctorate level, we have to contribute new knowledge to the world. So there's the challenge. We're all time poor. We want to engage with academic research. So I'm going to show you some free platforms. Some you'll be familiar with, some might be new. Some academic portals, some will be new to you. I'm going to show you the ones that I use. Some that are expensive, some that are free. And then how you can find your space in the education research community. So some practical examples to think about. So as ever, I've got you on two screens here. I've got you all over on this hand side. In the chat box, pose some questions, and then we can have a little kind of Q&A right at the end if you want to ask anything. And it's all getting recorded. I'll send it to you all tomorrow morning. So the first idea, just some easy references. So I'm going to come in and out of the slides as we go through. The first one, and I'm conscious that one or two people might be watching from overseas, so I'm going to give it a kind of English lens here. So the Education Endowment Foundation, some of you will be familiar with. I'm just going to make sure I show it to everybody. John Hattie's Visible Learning is effect sizes. Pocket, which is an app, which I'm going to use. I'm going to see if I can get my visualize working. If not, I'll show it to you on my phone via the screen. A research app, you can kind of see a little preview here. These both are free. What I love about Pocket is it synchronizes to your phone. It saves everything, so you don't have to keep emailing everything to yourself and you flood your inbox. And then if you plug in your headphones, it actually reads it to you. So it's a really great app, and I've been using it for years. Google Scholar is going to be my first port of call for all of you. I'm going to show you some just simple tips that everyone can use. And I'm going to show you the new John Hattie Visible Learning, which is a great place to document stuff. So let me just come out the slides. Just as a reference, Education Endowment Foundation for England. There's your Teaching and Learning Toolkit. So how to find this, just a quick EEF, first link on Google or the sublink there, Teaching and Learning Toolkit. You're going to get all your funded research projects in England. You're going to get all your effect sizes, the costs, evidence strength. It's a good place to start if you're curious, you know, particularly new teachers watching, people that are doing projects for the first time, for master's degrees, education research. There's a whole body of documents here. As ever, go into the details. You've got a full paper and a summary and the context. And I guess with all of us, myself also, be cautious of effect sizes, know what they mean. I've got a few blogs on my site and a few resources on there to help you understand what effect sizes are. And again, if you see an effect size that's +10, just be cautious with that, interrogate it, etc., etc. The second one's John Hattie's Visible Learning. So this is, oh God, nearly 15 years now. Now this is John Hattie's original effect size. And when this started to hit the kind of social media teacher world, everyone was very excited about a kind of league table of things to do. Don't crack any jokes, humor, 0.04 impact on outcomes. So, you know, again, look at this with caution. It was very alluring to begin with. And I'm going to show you a new version, what John's got, and also just maybe just talk about the evidence on feedback, for example. I know John published a paper, there's feedback there, 0.7. Published a paper just last summer. I read it, I critiqued it, I sent it back to me. He actually replied, which is always nice. And he said we were right. My analysis was right. They duplicated lots of studies in this effect size, which perhaps might have led some misleading conclusions. The Pocket App researcher app will come back to. And I'm just going to go to Google Scholar. So there's my little screen. I want to just kind of show you general searches, how to do maybe some building up a big bibliography, and how to set up some alert. So if I just load up my little Google Scholar link here, make sure I'm on the right side, I'm just going to switch to my teacher toolkit side. So if I just type in here, let me just go, I'm going to go retrieval practice. And if I just press enter, just some basic stuff, you can all create your own account, it's free. There are 3.7 million results. Where to start? So I'm going to take out citations first of all. Let's see if that grows. So it doesn't change by much. I know retrieval practice dates back to 1895. The first academic reference out there is in 1909 by Mary Edwina Abbott, if you're interested. But I want to look at the latest stuff. So I'll just filter to 2017, and I'm down to 250,000. Now, I want to make sure that the research actually mentions retrieval practice and exact quotes, because we've got retrieval here, which might be a reference to retrieval from the brain, memory, but retrieval practice is a particular teaching technique, teaching pedagogy technique. So in quotation marks, really important, I've narrowed it down. So just for reference, I don't want any citations, book references, that type of stuff. Retrieval practice mentioned specifically in the paper, in the publication, and since 2017. I'm down to 5,000 now. That's pretty good. I might be interested in England only, or even primary schools. So I can filter, keep going away, and you just got to play around with this. And you can add in plus and minus symbols and/or commands, all that type of stuff. So I'm down to 1 there. But you can see there it's primary results, and I've written results there. I should put primary school. So I'll just double check. So it's changed 123. Now, another thing to notice is we've got HTML links. So I'm a member of the Chartered College, so I can get into this. But if I didn't have a subscription, I'm relying on PDF. So this one should just simply open. Let me just give that a moment to load. There we go. And the other ones that are behind paywalls, for example, so there's one I can have a look at. So this HTML, if I wasn't a member of the Charter College, that would be locked. So I guess when I click that, it's either going to be the web page, or if I just pop back to this one, which looks like a reference to something from a government website, I get the summary. Now, I used to use a portal called Sci-Hub. Interestingly, I'm just going to go to my Twitter feed here. I spotted today that it's actually been blocked and banned. Here it is here. So it's reported on Sky News just recently, and I discovered this when I visited a school in Belarus. The lady who invented this, essentially, it was a portal into journals behind the scenes. There's a whole culture of who pays for them, who pays for the academics to write the journals, etc. And this story released recently was all about, is the website actually sucking in your kind of university login details? So at the moment it's dead, the website, but it keeps coming back, and it's a really good portal to access papers. So until that's fixed, I can't necessarily show you that one, but that's a good hack. If I go back to Scholar, so I'm just going to show you a couple more things. So I've showed you how to kind of filter. In terms of building up a bibliography, if you just press, so you can obviously save these, but if you press the quotation marks here, you've got all the references for you. Now, I don't know how old you are, but if you remember handwriting thesis, which is what I did at college, then it could take a week or two just to write your references. So here's a little copy paste feature, and you've got some academic portals there for referencing also. In terms of alerts, if I have this as an alert, all I just do is press that button and it will ping me anything to my inbox without me having to worry about it. So if I pop to my alerts, and I change these all the time, if I pop into my alerts, you can kind of see the things that I'm gathering for my doctoral research, my personal interest, my teaching and learning content on my site. And it's a nice way to kind of remove the burden of trying to search things. Once you've done the hard work here, you'll get maybe 3 or 4 alerts once a week, depending on how many. So I get about 7 or 8 emails with all the different search entries when anything's published. And occasionally it brings out things that are quite old. So you just need to go back to the original search filter here, cancel it, start again, those types of things. So that's Google Scholar. And then the last one I just want to come back to, and I'll show you these 2 apps at the end, was the Visible Learning Meta website. So let me just load it up. I'm going to put this in the chat box for you. Here it comes. You can just open that on your web page on your side. There we go. So if I just load it up, what I love about this is it's an updated version of John Hattie's Meta Learning. If we just pop into student here, again, if you want to kind of filter past studies, those types of things, you can filter with the effect sizes. So it kind of cuts things away. So we want to look at something with a positive 0.4. We want to look at something that maybe got existing 500 studies. So there's 3 there. So I've already filtered it down. I can look at the database of students involved, all the potential impact on kids. And then I can slide along here and kind of get a summary. And then I can click on this positive self-concept example. I'll skip that login there, but I have a login. But you can kind of see the kind of synopsis there and all the papers all in one place. So it's a really good piece of work here by John Hattie and his Visible Learning team. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with this. Be curious to know in the chat box if you've seen this before. I don't think it's done the rounds on social media, but it's a really good resource. So that's another really good platform to look at. Now, what I did as a CPD resource on my website membership last summer, so this will be live on the site for anybody to download next this summer, was I looked at all the effect sizes. I took a sample and I jumbled them up, almost like a great little kind of CPD activity if you want to share this with other colleagues in your school or college and start to build up a research culture. So these are all jumbled up, and it gets the conversation going that, you know, if I have, you know, does social media have a strong impact on outcomes? Does ADHD have a low impact? All that type of stuff. So those are the correct orders there. So you can build your own. This is mine. You can get this on my site if you're interested. And then taking it further, this is a bit like maybe a self-reflection scorecard for your team, for your school leadership. And obviously we all want to get to the right-hand side. So I guess when you look back at the slides and this video, just have a look at this and maybe come up with your own or use mine and use it as a kind of scorecard for thinking about research cultures in school. And that's just another one at looking at kind of analysis, posing questions, gathering evidence, and those types of things. So any questions so far, anyone, before I move on to the second topic, looking at some portals? Any questions? Okay, last chance. Okay, so academic portals, there's loads of these, loads. Some are paid for, some are open source. So Zotero, you can generally have a play with this. But if I come out the slides, I can show you them. Let me come out the slides. So Zotero looks like this. These are just places to gather references. You can kind of see the snapshot here. You love to kind of dig in. I guess it's just finding your flavor. When I first was exposed to these, I was like, what a headache. Started playing around with them, didn't know what to do, but you eventually find the one that you like using the most. I'm going to show you my one that I use, which is Mendeley, which I'll come to. EndNote, the great referencing tool again. So these are just good platforms for building up databases of things that you've read, highlighting, gathering citations, finding other papers that people have written. I sadly can't show you Sci-Hub because it doesn't work anymore. But let me show you Mendeley. I've already logged in. So you can see on the left-hand side here, these are all my folders. So if I get a paper, so this one here is about sketchnoting, so dual coding. I would probably filter this one into, so a bit of a kind of click and drag. I'd probably put this into a teaching paper folder because it's something I might write for my blog. But other things for my doctoral studies, I've got a current focus on Ofsted, social media networks, teacher voice, that type of stuff. And I can pop into any folder, it filters. If I just load a paper, for example, you can kind of see on the right-hand side over here, you kind of get the link to read the paper, the synopsis, the paper loads up. And what I love about it the most is it synchronizes with your phone or iPad. So if I highlight this paragraph, color code it there, it will actually link to my synchronized with my phone. It's just brilliant. And you can add notes. And these things are really good. And, you know, until I got really into academic research, it's something I wish I'd known maybe when I was doing my master's degree 15 years ago, whether these things, I'm sure some of these things existed in some shape or form. So this is a really good place. So this is an online version. Let me just move my slides out of the way, and I'll just show you the desktop version. Here we go. This is my desktop of Mendeley, and I just press the button up here and I synchronize it. And it's just another way. So if you want to look at it as a desktop application, particularly if you want to log off the internet and not get distracted with all your notifications, this is another way to do it. And again, it will synchronize back to your online version. So Mendeley is my favorite. It's one I've got comfortable with the most. But there's loads out there. Find what works for you would be my top tip in terms of looking at references and portals and those types of things. So let me just put my slides back up and just trying to think if I could show you anything else on Mendeley. You know, all the papers there. Other things that you can do, obviously there's the library, there's loads of forums. If I just go to the actual website itself, just bear with me. Let me find my link. There it is there. And the other great thing about it is, if you see another paper online, I've got this little plugin here in the right-hand corner of my browser. If I just, you know, visible learning or what have you, press that button, as long as I'm signed in, so let's just see if I can do that quickly. It tends to find other references or automatically downloads the PDFs into your Mendeley portal. So it's another way to work really kind of cleverly, smooth, you know, reduce your workload, those types of things. And it's a really good place, which I would recommend you have a look at if you're kind of really curious about getting into lots of papers, referencing, color coding, filtering, those types of things. And when you go onto the website, there's loads of groups, there's loads of forums, there's loads of places where you can look at current funding, lots of things going on there. Okay, right, I'm going to move on to idea 3. I'm just going to double check my notes. Searches, reference, and highlights in desktop phone. Yes, I covered everything. That's the website for Sci-Hub, what it normally looks like. It incarnates every few months as government agencies close it down, but there's a huge community here accessing lots of papers on the basis that knowledge should be free. But we know that the whole culture with academic, there's a huge body of funding going on, academics protecting the work. I used to use this as a teacher when I didn't have access to university login, which I do through Cambridge, and I have 1 or 2 subscriptions that I pay for myself. But before that, I would always use this as an easy place. So you have to keep an eye on that if you're interested. Right, the next thing I just want to spend 10 minutes going through is just some practical tips for everybody. And then we can have a little chat at the end if you're interested. What makes a good research question? Well, there's always going to be lots of different reasons and purposes. So in the chat box I asked you earlier, maybe pose some research focus for me or a potential question, and I'll kind of come back to you with some thoughts on it. I'll give you an example of my first research question for my doctorate. It was, what influence does social media have on education policy? And my supervisor, he went, the so what, now what question. And that soon filtered into looking at social networks on Twitter specifically. And where my current focus is looking at what words people use, how they're connected online, and understanding what goes on in that social network. So my questions are moving away from rather how and why to more under what conditions lead to influence, or maybe a hashtag going viral on Twitter. Other types of things, if in a school context, looking at things that you can measure, evidence, depend on the context of your research. What time frame you have available. So my doctoral studies, I'm supposed to get it done in 5 years part-time. I said to my supervisor recently, well, if I have to do a bachelor's degree in 4 years full-time, how am I going to do a doctorate in 5 years part-time? I've got no chance. So I've been a bit kinder on myself, especially during lockdown. I'm just going a bit slower. And I suspect it'll take me probably 6 or 7 years to complete. So I'm currently in my 3rd year, and I'll talk about that right at the end. Other kind of things, at least at a doctorate and PhD level, the pressure is not only does it have to be a robust study, but you have to contribute new knowledge. So the challenge there at PhD is you have to find a gap in theoretical frameworks, philosophical frameworks, and contribute new knowledge to the world. So that's a real tough challenge. So I can talk about research questions if you want to post some ideas to me and give you some help on that. Here's a nice little framework you might want to use as a research project in school, so kind of school level, maybe an assignment or an appraisal project. Simple little methodology, which I'd recommend. This is an incarnation of my 5-minute lesson plan, the 5-minute research plan. So again, this is all explained on my blog, step by step. It's a nice little framework if you want to get yourself interested in conducting research in your school, or conducting a little research group with your team members. And you might find that a nice little framework to kind of inspire your thinking. An example of a project, I conducted a verbal feedback study with 13 teachers in 7 state schools across England. It was published in September 2019. And the critique, well, there's the research question that the team came up with. I wasn't part of this because I didn't want to influence their bias. We wanted to help busy classroom teachers think ethically, think critically as researchers while on their feet in the classroom. So the blue paper that you can download on the site is got all the kind of teacher experience, the wisdom, the tools they used, and the actual evidence, rather than always having to write down feedback in kids' books. We know marking drives teachers crazy in all types of schools that at least I've seen on my travels to schools around the world. And all the tools there in the orange paper. And in essence, very briefly, this is the model we used, and we met them 5 days over the academic year. And I think this is also a good appraisal research network. So the work that I now do with teachers in schools, where they moved away from being set targets, school cultures are now starting to allow staff to set their own research appraisal inquiry targets, but through a very specific methodology. And you can go and get the timestamps there around the bubble. And when we look at this a bit deeper, the ask is, what evidence do we want to gather? What's our research question? So what impact does retrieval practice have on year 1 pupils? There's a question. Let's refine that further on year 1 pupils in maths. And then we can maybe specify a type of retrieval practice if we want to narrow down the strategy and be very, very specific. What impact does quizzing children at the end of a lesson in year 1, having a maths lesson? You can see how the more we filter, the more likely we will find more likely conclusions. The investigation stage, what types of evidence? You can't gather everything. This is all the challenge I face at a doctoral level now. How do I narrow it down so I can actually come to a conclusion? What are the pitfalls? How are you going to collect the evidence, your research methods? So I'll talk about this. Innovation phase is, what are your tentative claims halfway through your studies? What's your research saying? What's expected? what's unexpected, how do you be conscious of your own bias, etc., etc. And then the last one is this transfer of knowledge. So these are all the kind of strategies that the teachers use. There's on the right hand side 13 teachers. There's the kind of most frequent ones. So rather than writing marking comments in books, here's a range of live assessment feedback strategies used. They engaged the word definition. So, this was a day's work alongside designing the question, then the 4 days actually doing the work. And this went on for pages, actually, that data. And essentially, the teachers saved so much time in terms of workload. And that last stage was, how do they reflect this? So this is a great little methodology for a research-based appraisal project. Taking it a little bit further, so if I now use that verbal feedback project academically, these are your different polar opposites in terms of research. They all have a place. I guess on the right side, I suppose, you've got more teacher kind of experiences. So this is more of subjectivism, whereas on the left-hand side, the scientific approach is positivism. So maybe where you have Ofsted and inspection type research gathered. On the right-hand side, I know that when I tell you off in the class and I keep doing it, that you behave. I don't necessarily have to write it down, but I've got that practical experience. So I guess thinking more critically as a researcher, I have to gather that in observations or data collection while I'm on my feet. So they're all explained here. I'm not going to go through them all if you're not familiar with some of the terms, but let's just take it further. Once you identify your research approach, what techniques will you use to gather your data? Most of us do case studies, interviews, questionnaires, those types of things. So you can conduct controlled experiments. The techniques you use to then analyze the data you collect, well, there's the range there. So if I put them all on the page, this is what it looks like. And then if I explain the verbal feedback research, the teachers conducted action research, they used questionnaires with their kids and observations of their own lessons. They gathered and counted the differences in data or the differences in kids arriving to class because of the verbal feedback strategies used. And they developed a theory that when you talk to kids in micro scripts and live assessment, it actually raises outcomes rather than happens 2 or 3 weeks later after the lesson. So that's a very quick summary of that verbal feedback practical example pitched in an academic framework. So what I've done with this, folks, is I've put it in a little research framework matrix you might want to use if you want to think about your research journey and where it will go. And just to kind of finish, I just want to take a moment in terms of show you where I'm at with my research journey. So these are my 4 pillars. So I'm sure you're familiar with my blog and my Twitter presence. I got a lot of people. So it's given me a free voice, freedom to speech, as it all has. We all can talk on social media to a degree, most of us. So there's a democracy in some respects, unless it's banned in your country, whatever. But number 2, I've learned loads from sharing ideas and getting feedback from people. At 3, I've then been activist. So I've either done campaigns, petitions, tweeted the government, talked to celebrities, called someone out, etc., etc. And I've gathered people around me in solidarity. So I guess my Twitter followers, my website readership is my solidarity. It's my kind of group, I suppose. On the right-hand side is this Open University Research Practitioner Development Framework. Probably a year ago, I was probably looking at how I would work as a researcher, building my theory. And I think I'm moving beyond that now. I'm starting to develop an academic language. I still believe I'm a teacher at heart, so I've still got that kind of raw edge. But when you do a doctorate, you kind of live in the practice of your research. When you do a PhD, you're living that, you're kind of digging into the theory. So I'm developing my ways of thinking. This is where I'm currently having my struggles. And then the last stage is how would I disseminate that? So it's a really nice, interesting model that's worth pursuing once you finish this. Now I'm just going to finish with show you what I'm currently doing. So I'm looking at Twitter networks. So I'm going to probably just be 5 more minutes, folks. I just want to show you some examples. So I've conducted a little analysis just because it's something I'm interested in. So it might find this a bit weird. But I'm looking at Gavin Williamson, the current Education Secretary of State in England. I've exported all his tweets on Twitter, and he's posted 2,100 times, and he's posted more since he was Secretary of State in 2017. But during the pandemic, during the education crisis, he's posted less. And actually what I've discovered, he's been posting more, 111 times in 2011 as we move out. Well, you know, fingers crossed, but he's posted more, a third, almost half more this year alone than he did the entire pandemic. So whether he was under stress or whether he was hiding, whatever it would be, something to consider. Here's all these tweets, the time of day. So what I'm essentially looking at is, this is an individual example, but I'm looking at groups of teachers, hashtag trends, whether it's a popular hashtag, you know, close the schools, no masks, SLT chat, PhD chat, whatever it is. And I'm looking at how networks are formed, what's the discourse, and how are they influencing policy, you know, or other people, or who are the key people in the networks. So this is all in the slides. I won't go through them all. And I guess this last one here, the Hoaxy, is a really interesting one. If I just let this one load up, this shows you anyone that's tweeting about Gavin Williamson at the moment, but it's checking for spam bots and fake accounts. So fingers crossed this loads up anytime soon. Yeah, there we go. So you can see the frequency on the left, the timestamp, and there's the network, and you can start to see accounts. If you see a red dot, that represents a Twitter account. And the red dot essentially represents someone behaving in a fake account, so misinformation or disinformation kind of methodology. And you can kind of zoom in and you can interact with all this. So as for UK, we know, as for them, for UK is campaigning for kids not to wear masks in school. So I'm really interested in how this information spreads, whether it's genuine, whether it's fake, how it influences others, how people are connected, who's replying, etc. So that's where my head is. I won't necessarily talk about that anymore. I'll just finish with this. Now, this was published by the research, actually Saunders et al. They got the name at the top there on the right-hand side. And Derby University published it, but I can't find it at the moment. But I think this, when I found it, you could click on all these words and it would actually give you a little video to explain, I guess, the research practitioner framework matrix I showed you earlier. When you want to start getting into what do all these words mean? What are all these, you know, I'm now into kind of area of critical realism and thinking about theoretical frameworks and social media networks. 2 or 3 years ago, my head wasn't in that space. And I wouldn't know what to do at that point. Even now I've got different struggles. I look back and actually think, oh God, I have actually made quite a bit of progress. So this is definitely worth pursuing if you want to get into language and what it all means. But at least if it gives you reassurance, in my 3rd year doctorate at Cambridge University, I'm not getting too bogged down in this. I'm starting to slowly identify which area I'm in as I identify my research network, so that I could start to articulate it in my kind of documentation. So there's loads of tips there, but I'm going to come off that and just finish and essentially kind of conclude with, there's lots of things we can do as teachers. I guess the context is it for an MA project, MPQSL? Is it for an appraisal project? Is it for master's degree? Or are you thinking about a kind of doctorate? Or how do we do all this in a busy kind of nature, as I'm going to assume most people are teachers? So there's lots. So I'm just going to come off my slide. I'm going to let people take some questions. I'm just going to turn my, if I can fathom it out, I'm going to turn my virtual background off so I can just show you my phone. Here I am in my office. Let me just grab my phone. I'm going to show you these couple of Pocket app and Researcher app, which I didn't have time to show you. The Pocket app, everybody, if I just load mine up. So this will synchronize with my website. Here it is here. I don't know if you can see that. I should probably put it on a visualizer. But if you download Pocket, you've got all your apps here. And as you click into one, you can then plug in your headphones at the bottom. You can highlight it all. It's just going to load up this one. There it is. Headphones at the bottom, and it will actually read it to you, so it saves you workload. And what I love about Pocket is rather when you find something interesting, you send it back to your inbox and your inbox becomes busy, you store it all on here, it downloads it. So if you're on a plane or underground, it's already been downloaded for you. So that's a really good tip. The same with Researcher app. If I just load that one up. And again, there's lots out there, but these are just the ones that I use. So that's Researcher uploading now. Again, hope you can see that. And that will just find all the articles that I'm interested in. It's a bit more of an academic tool to use, whereas Pocket, you can save blogs, news reports, people's tweets, anything really. Whereas this is an academic piece of software. And then the last one is ResearchGate, which I didn't really mention, but that's just, I guess it's a thing like LinkedIn or Facebook. This is my academic portal. Now there's academia and whatever you use, there's loads, and you can end up being swamped with all this social media. So just choose one platform and go with it, and create your own little profile. You can publish your little papers there and build up a little network. So there's loads, but that's 6 minutes over. My apologies. I promise quick sofa bite-sized CPD. I'll send you the videos, recording, and all the slides and templates tomorrow, kind of lunchtime-ish via Eventbrite. I'll hang on the line. Anyone's got any questions? Thank you for watching.